So I have been hearing quite a lot recently, over recent weeks. It's been in the news, newspapers, TV, radio, about the rising welfare cost across the UK. Now, before I get into it, I want to say I am fully aware that money does not grow on trees. Money is not free. You can't just print money willy-nilly. That's how inflation happens, and we all know we've got enough of that going on at the minute. So it's an important topic to discuss and make sure that you're getting value for every penny. 100%. However, what I have noticed over probably the last month or 6 weeks or so is how mental health has been singled out amongst the rise in disability payments, and almost feels like it's demonized. I know there are people out there that will take the piss. I do. I'm not naive. I'm not stupid. Those people who take the piss make it worse for those people who are genuinely struggling with their mental health, and it angers myself more than as much as anyone, because when I know people who are in such a dire place and I see someone trying to milk it for themselves, and it pisses me off, and it should do for all of us. But there does seem to be a level of stigmatization of our mental health. And what really highlighted this to me was I was listening to a show the other day, and the presenter, I'm not going to say the name, this is not a dig at anyone, and as always I will try and stay apolitical. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to just constantly have a go at one side and say the other side's brilliant. If someone does something good, I'll say well done. If someone does something moronic, I will point it out, and I don't care where they fall on the political spectrum. But what this presenter said was, in a laughing, joking, judging way, am I honestly to believe that mental health has gone up that much in 5 years? The person, I'm not going to mention them, but the person who said that probably believes something very similar to me. Yeah, there are going to be people out there taking the piss, but maybe didn't realise just how much mental health has got worse over the last 5 years. So that is what this episode is going to be about tonight. I'm going to be going back in time. I've built myself a little time machine. I'm inviting you along with me to re-experience some painful memories of what happened 5 years ago. Apologies. But it is what it is. This is the Mancast. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, and let's get into it. So 5 years ago, 2020, we all remember what happened, the coronavirus pandemic. It was a scary time. It was a time of unknowns. We didn't know really what was going on. The people we elect to lead us, I'm pretty sure, were as scared as everyone else. Perhaps with more information than, definitely with more information than everyone else had. And were trying to do their best to lead their countries. What I found very strange at the time, every country, bar one or two, seemed to read off the same scripts of how they were going to deal with the pandemic. I still remember, it's probably one of those painful memories that sticks with you, but I remember Boris Johnson up on the stage doing his speech in March 2020, telling everyone that they must stay home. This was serious. It was unknown, but it was serious. Stay home, and it was 2 weeks to squash a sombrero, something like that. He had love him or loathe him, he did have a way with words that sticks with you. 2 weeks. A lot of people didn't know what was going on. A lot of people, there were certain people from day dot who were like, no, this is ridiculous. Myself personally at the time, I'm like, it's 2 weeks, we can do this. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to spend more time with my kids. 2 weeks to chill out at home. What's 2 weeks? Those 2 weeks continued and went on and went on until the restrictions were lifted. And then, just like any virus does, it came back, and then we went into another lockdown. And then those restrictions were lifted, and then there was the whole tier thing, like, you live in this area, you're in tier 2, you can meet 6 people. 7 is dangerous, but you can meet 6. I remember actually, on that note, when the first lockdowns were lifted, I went into Wetherspoons. Other pubs are available, but I like a Wetherspoons. The price is decent, the food's good as well. But I remember going into a Wetherspoons, and me being me, you had to wear a mask. I had, it wasn't a mask per se, it was, what do we call them, like neck warmer type things. Mine's gone blank. So I had that out to just below my eyes, and I'm walking down the street, and as we walk in the door, they had security on the door. This was like mid-morning, to make sure everyone had their face protection on, and as soon as I put it on, I started breathing very heavy, panicking, worrying very vocally, and then sat down and rolled it down and went, oh, I'm safe now, I'm not going to kill anyone. And my wife was like, you're such a dick. I'm like, this is how ridiculous it was though. Even by that point, I'm like, are you telling me if I stand up, I pose a threat to people, but I sit down and I'm safe? Make it make sense. It didn't make sense very early on for me. I wasn't against trying to protect the vulnerable, but when we were shutting down schools and this 2-week lockdown went on for a lot longer than 2 weeks, and then came back around, and let's be clear, the Conservatives were in charge at the time. So it's easy to point the fingers and say it was them, except the Labour Party on the other side of the house were fully behind it, if not wanted more stringent lockdowns. No one come out of this with their hands clean. That's the way I see it. I remember having conversations with people in our bubble of 6 and saying, this is going to cause a mental health crisis, and that is going to last a lot longer than this virus will. That was my view from probably 2 months into this crisis that we were facing. The mental health knock-on effect is going to be potentially catastrophic. When you just shut down everything, people's lives are altered in a click of the fingers decision, and people's lives are on hold. People's businesses went under. Children My youngest child at the time was 1. Just before her first birthday, we went into lockdown. She was about 7 months old. We went into the first lockdown. And my youngest daughter was growing up completely different to how her older sister did. Those primary years where you learn things like little things. You watch people as they're talking and you learn how the lips move. And you've taken that away because everyone's got a mask covering their mouth. Kids ain't seeing that. And I know it's only anecdotal stories, but I'm hearing stories of people whose kids are similar age to my youngest who have speech problems. Yeah. Actions have consequences. And I felt from very early on that those consequences were never thought of, never given a second thought. And perhaps that's because we live in a parliamentary system where every 4 or 5 years you have the chance to vote in new people. So everything is very immediate and there's no thought on what this could do for the future. And I get it, people want to keep their jobs. Schools were shut. Children who are older, who are like my eldest child, school is we always tell our kids school is the best time of your life. That's when you meet your mates, you learn so much, not just what you're learning from a textbook, but you start to learn about people. You start to learn how to have fun, learn experiences, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. We were taking that away from kids, which always baffled me when COVID-19 was never a threat for children. And as parents watching that happening to your kids, that was heartbreaking. And that was heartbreaking on the parents. Parents who are not knowing whether they're going to have a job to go back to, who had these families to provide for, some of which lost their jobs, lost their businesses. People who were striving to do the best they can for the kids are now unemployed. Self-employed people who could not claim the 80% of their wages that was coming from the government. Newsflash, government doesn't have money. It's taxpayers' money. It comes from the people. And that's another thing as well. The huge amount of borrowing that took place to fund that we're going to be paying back for decades, which is myself and my kids. And unless we sort it out, potentially their kids too. These were the knock-on effects that locking down everything was going to have. So I had serious questions, and what I noticed is by myself having these questions, I was all of a sudden a far-right conspiracy theorist. I remember seeing anti-lockdown protests, and far-right conspiracy theorist is how they were described as by our national media, the BBC. I wish I'd found that article. But Google it, have a little search. See if it's still up there. People who question it like myself, all of a sudden, the world's flat, the moon's made of cheese and all sorts of stuff. That is what I must believe. That's almost a little rhyme there. The world's flat, the moon's made of cheese. These are the things that I believe. There you go. Wasted talent. Just for daring to question the narrative. There were not many people, especially people with influence, people with voices that would be heard who were popping their head above the parapet. Now, I remember vividly someone, a TV personality, I recognise her face. I can tell you what she's been in. It might have been like Coronation Street or something, I don't know. And I think she was on Loose Women, which again, I don't watch, honestly. But I remember her being quite vocal in the effect it was going to have on mental health. And mental health is something I'm very passionate about, because it's something that's affected myself and affected people I know. So I heard this and I thought, fair play. Someone has had the bottle to stand up and say, I have questions. I wasn't sure whether that article would still be available, but I thankfully managed to find it. So Denise Welch accuses media of fear-mongering during the coronavirus crisis. And this says 4th of September, I'm guessing that was 2020, so what's that, 6 months after it started. So she told Eamon Holmes and Ruth that she's shocked and appalled by the way in which the government and media have represented coronavirus to people. I've taken a lot of criticism for this, but I've never felt so passionate about anything in my life, she said as she explained why she believes why we should look to scientific data for an accurate representation of where we are in the fight against the virus. Denise called for a change in the way news about the virus is reported, arguing that it created an environment of anxiety and fear, particularly for those living with mental health issues. And this is something I experienced at the time. Not myself, but people I know who I knew had and were having their own issues, that this was like a punch straight in the gut. I had conversations with people who felt like they genuinely could not go on anymore. So she said, everything that I do is trying to find a parity between how we deal with physical illness and how we deal with mental illness on the same level. Here. That's what she said. I would do anything to help balance the fear-mongering. Now, if you can remember back to 2020, and around that time, every day there was a news briefing with the Prime Minister. Every day there was a dead body count. It's in your face. This many people have died. If you do not do what we say, people will die. This many people have died today. This many people died yesterday. This many people died with COVID, not of, and a lot of them were, any death is tragic, and I'm not trying to belittle that, and I don't want anyone to think that I am. Any death is tragic. But when you look at the average age of people who died, it was around, or actually slightly above, the average age of people who pass away in this country. And a lot of people who died had comorbidities, other things that they were also ill with. COVID may have been the thing that unfortunately took their life eventually. But you give someone in that position the flu, potentially would have done the same thing, and awful, heartbreaking. I know firsthand just how the way it was represented, how people were so petrified to even step outside. I see people today still wearing masks and will not go into crowded spaces, will not shake someone's hand. And you can see the fear in their face, where all they want to do is just go home. That fear was so deep-rooted in so many people. that it has not gone away for a lot of people. And in late 2020, I'd had enough, because I could see it. And I'm sure if you're listening to this and just look at where you live, look at the wider picture, people in your life, be them family, friends, or strangers you pass in the street, something is very different today to 2019. They're very different, and not for the better. But back in 2020, especially as someone who was a personality, to pop her head above the parapet like that and talk about it, it took a lot of ball, as I said. She stressed it's so important that we continue to take advice and guidelines seriously. This was the rebuttal from Dr. Sarah that was there. I think it's really important that we look at the death rates. Every day? I'm not so sure. We look at the number of hospitalizations and the number of people on ventilators, and those are on the decrease despite the spikes in numbers of cases. Natural immunity is a thing, just saying, which usually indicates that we are managing, actually track and trace and isolate as well as we'd like. But she did say, I also do think there is so much to this virus we still don't know. We don't know how our immune system is going to work in terms of antibodies, whether we'll be immune to it and how long we're going to be immune. We don't know how it's going to affect us come the winter and when the flu season and other winter viruses come around. So I do think we still need to be cautious. We do still need to practice social distancing, wearing masks and washing hands. Shutting schools? I'm not so sure. Putting the fear of God in people? Not so sure. And what I will say is the flu in 2020 miraculously seemed to almost disappear. It's not to say that the flu wasn't there. I'm not being all conspiratorial. What I am saying is a lot of these people who tragically died, were they going to be the people who the flu took? And that is something that was never looked at. I was never against protecting the vulnerable. If you are elderly, if you are immune compromised, Christ, I can talk, I promise. Stay home. Let people run around after you, get this, get that, get the other, and let's make sure you're as safe as you possibly can be. For me, the continual lockdowns created a mental health time bomb that at some point was going to go off. Which is why when I hear now, 5 years on, that we're talking about why is there a mental health crisis, why are so many people claiming disability and welfare for mental health, and in particular, I heard one person saying and laughing, am I really to believe it's got that worse in 5 years? Yeah. Because I was calling out 5 years ago. To my friends, to my family, to anyone who'll listen. And do you know what? Some of them said, you need a tinfoil hat. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, I'm just looking at it logically. You know what I mean? Actions have consequences. There's going to be consequences. And has anyone given any thought to that? It didn't feel like it. And as I already said, it seems to be a level of short-termism when it comes to our parliamentary procedure. We got a vote coming in 4 years. Let's look good now. Not what's going to be good for the country. Now, the government at the time were using, and I remember hearing it, nudge tactics. I thought they were just walking down the hall and pushing each other. It turns out it's not that they meant. So, nudge tactics. To bring them up, this is Wikipedia. So, or nudge theory, should I say. Nudge theory is a concept in behavioural economics, decision making, behavioural policy, social psychology, consumer behaviour, and related behavioural sciences that propose adapted designs of the decisive environments as ways to influence the behaviour and decision making of groups or individuals. Nudging contrasts with other ways to achieve compliance. They love that. Compliance. You will comply. Such as education, legislation, or enforcement, or a virus that they do not know how to handle, but you do what they're told. And then you need them. You need daddy government. So that's just the first paragraph in what nudge theory is. I already question deaths constantly on there. Nudge theory. This many people who died. The fact that the Prime Minister is addressing a nation every day to explain just how bad it is, but how well you're doing by complying. Those people who disagree, far-right conspiracy theorists, good old friends of the BBC, sorted us out by saying no, put that out. If you don't do what we're asking you to, but we'll find you if you don't, then you're killing grandma. People were snitching on their neighbours. They were snitching on the neighbours. Hope I don't get in trouble for this. But I remember it was 2020. At some point, there was a garden party going on behind me, where I was living at the time. I remember looking out my girl's bedroom window and thinking, good. And without trying to get people in trouble, let's just say these were people who had jobs where you wouldn't expect them to be disregarding the rules. They weren't law enforcement or anything like that, but let's just say they worked in state jobs. And my wife come in, looked out the window, said they're having a party. And I went, I know, it's disgusting. Didn't invite us. But good, I'm glad they're having a party. Because I've had enough of this. I never had enough of this. Oh no, there's 8 of them. Rather than 6. Everyone's going to die clearly because there's 2 more people. As I already said, I went into Wetherspoons when the first lockdown was eased. And I was a danger to everyone. Until I sat down, then I was safe. I'm like, these rules are just... They just want to be seen to be doing something. Is how it felt to me. The masks. You know, unless you're wearing, what was it, the H1N1, whatever was the proper industrial mask and all that. They were doing minimal, if anything. You know, but if you've got if you tell a population to wear a mask and 99% of them are wearing them, next you could tell them to do anything and a good majority is going to follow, you know. That's how it felt to me at the time. And maybe it's I like to push back on things that I don't agree with, and I can be a bit argumentative. Anyone who knows me will be shocked by me saying that, I'm sure. But it just didn't make sense. And there's part of me that said, make it make sense. Don't call me a far-right conspiracy theorist. Tell me why I'm wrong. Explain it to me. Because all I could see were rules in place that made little to no sense, and lockdown after lockdown after lockdown that was going to have a disastrous effect on people. And that's how I viewed it. And I hoped I was wrong. I wished I was wrong at the time. And I wish I could look back and say, I was a muppet, I was so wrong. It's not turned out that way. So, Birkbeck, University of London, done a study. And this is the repeated lockdowns, the title, repeated lockdowns had a lasting impact on mental health. Study finds shock bloody horror. So this was March of this year, so 5 years on. England's repeated COVID-19 lockdowns, COVID-19 related lockdowns had a substantial impact on the population's mental health, with effects likely persisting long after restrictions were eased. A study from Birkbeck, University of London, has found that repeated COVID-19 lockdowns in England had a significant and lasting impact on mental health, with symptoms remaining elevated even after restrictions eased. Shock horror. Led by Dr. Rashfal Densa-Kalon, the research analysed data from the UK household longitudinal study. They love their big words, don't they? Spanning 2009 to 2023, and found that mental health symptoms were significantly higher during the 3 national lockdowns in 2021 than in the decade prior, the previous 10 years. Although symptoms declined once restrictions were lifted, they remained elevated up to May 2023, particularly for women, remote workers, those with health conditions, and individuals aged 30 to 45. I've done a previous video about the rate of men taking their own life in this country, and it's the biggest killer of men under 50. And I think the highest group of men affected were 40 to 50 year olds, which encompasses these numbers. Notably for young adults aged 18 to 29 and those experiencing loneliness, mental health symptoms did not significantly improve even after the final lockdown ended in March 21. This suggests that some groups may have faced longer term psychological effects and could still require ongoing support. So the doctor who done it says, our study adds to identify the mental health impact of repeated lockdowns on population mental health in England, as well as inequalities in who is most affected. Even 1 year post-pandemic, rates of mental health remains high, suggesting there are vulnerable groups still in need of mental health support. Additionally, being prepared for potential future periods of isolation in the form of support for vulnerable groups, backed up by resources made available by governments and policymakers, is vital. The lockdowns, when you are constantly hit with it, this is how it felt to me. They were describing it as a world-ending virus. That was the level of fear that they tried instilling in people. That's why I got pissed off. I was like, this is serious. I was never one for, I wasn't like, it's made up, there's nothing there and all that stuff. And I know there was some of that stuff about it. That's not helpful. The virus was real. People died of the virus, tragically. I do question the numbers of people that died, because there were people who died with the virus who had additional comorbidities. There were people who were elderly any death is tragic, you know, and I'm not belittling it, and I mean no offense to anyone watching who's been affected by the virus. You know, my wife has 2 family members who are elderly who died after contracting COVID in the hospital. They were there for other reasons, I will state, and they were frail, they were elderly. It was tragic. It was heartbreaking. It was horrible. You know, so I'm not belittling it at all. The way it was covered in the media, the way it was addressed by politicians, this was the most dangerous thing that could ever happen. It was dangerous. It was. And there was a risk to the elderly, to the immune compromised. One risk group that wasn't there were children, which is why I never understood schools being shut. First lockdown, get it. You know, this chaos ensued, and I honestly believe people were trying to do their best, unsure what to do. And I honestly believe that some of those people thought to be seen to do something is better than doing nothing. Whether that something is the right thing, if you are seen to do something, then you are taking it serious, as it should have been taken, and you are trying. Now, pre-COVID, we had pandemic plans in place, and lockdowns were not amongst those. Then China done it and we copied them. What was the point of having a plan in place if you're just going to throw it out the window? Never got out. On a side note, the mandatory vaccinations across the NHS. I remember watching Sajid Javid, who was the health secretary at the time, walking through a hospital, and I believe it was a doctor, said, I'm out of job next month because you told me unless I get this jab, you're sacking me, and I ain't getting it because you're telling me to up yours, basically. And I was like, yeah, shouldn't be mandatory. You know, again, with that, we were told that if you get the vaccine, you cannot pass it on. That turned out to be crap, didn't it? You know what I mean? It's another example of, do you know what? It's the kind of thing that if someone was putting information that wrong on social media at the time, it would have been deemed misinformation or disinformation, and they would have had their channels taken down, never to be heard from again. I'm still waiting for the apologies, like, you know what I mean, over things like that. You know, people get stuff wrong. That's not a problem. But when you get something wrong and just think, ignore it and hope it goes away, it's kind of pathetic, to be honest. So there's a lot of stuff that happened during 2020 that was, you can look back on now and say, sort of Captain Hindsight over here, you know, it's obvious to say now it was going to cause a mental health crisis. I was calling out in 2020 to people who would listen to me. So now when our welfare bill has gone sky high, and a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is down to mental health. And then I hear a presenter on a show very sarcastically saying, am I really to believe it's gone up that much in 5 years? Yes. To be fair to this person was pushing back against lockdowns. But come on, man, the two go hand in hand. It's quite obvious. And yes, I'm aware some people will be taking a piss, and that makes it look bad on all of us who have genuine mental health issues or know people who have genuine mental health issues, it makes us all look bad because we're all tarred with the same brush. I hope that's a minority of people taking the piss. I hope those people taking the piss are found out. I hope they're dealt with legally, But come on, when you've had, a year? Well, it's more than a year, because even after the lockdowns lifted, it was still in the news daily. There's another spike coming, there's another mutation, this one's going to be the worst one yet. The media the media couldn't let go of it. Could not let go of it. They loved it. I mean, if you're at home, you've got no choice but to watch TV. You know what I mean? It was like the golden goose, the goose that laid the golden egg. Just kept laying it every day. Can't let go. Come on, give us the next mutation. Give us the next killer virus, please. I bet their viewing figures are great. And I hope those people who felt like that, and I know there will be some like that. I know there's a lot of journalists who are like, I was told to do this, and honestly, I was fearful. I thought I was doing a good thing. There will be journalists out there for that virus was great for me. I hope you sleep well at night. Don't you dare then be talking about how this mental health crisis is BS when you helped to fan those flames. Just saying. So, I want to pull up this article because I read this, and this to me, it's an important article that I read, and one that I really, really wanted to put in. Okay, so this is from the IFS, the Institute for Financial Studies. Look at that. I got 3 big words out. Various indicators point to a deterioration in population mental health, likely contributing to rising disability benefit caseloads. Mental health has worsened since the pandemic. Who would have knew? This is consistent with rising disability benefit claims for mental health. A new IFS report released today, funded by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation and the Health Foundation, finds a range of evidence that mental health has worsened since the pandemic. This is consistent with rising disability benefit claims for mental health. Since the pandemic, the number of 16 to 64-year-olds in England and Wales on disability benefits has risen from 0.9 million to 2.9 million. That is a huge jump. That is a huge jump. With 7.5% of 16 to 64-year-olds now claiming, around 500,000 of this rise has come from claimants whose main condition is a mental health problem. So, not all 2 million, but about a lot of them. So, yeah, a lot of people. The report finds across a range of surveys there has been a steady increase in reported mental health problems. In the mid-2010s, around 8 to 10% of working age people said they had long-term mental health or behavioural condition. In the latest data, that has risen to 13 to 15%. That's a big jump. This is a tragic one that I really want to highlight, and it's going to lead me on to the next article as well. Working age deaths of despair have increased since the pandemic. After adjusting for demographic changes, deaths attributed to alcohol, drugs and suicide were up 24%. But mental health couldn't have gone up since 2020. To keep going back to this presenter, couldn't have done. 24% has gone up. That's around 3,700 deaths. That was in 2023 compared with pre-pandemic levels for 15 to 64-year-olds. There was a strong link between these deaths and mental health issues. So this rise indicates an increase in the incidence of severe mental health problems. These deaths were the main driver of overall increases in working age mortality in 2023, which stood 5.5% above pre-pandemic levels. So this article's a little old, but early data for 2024, which do not include cause of death, indicate a fallback to 1.5%. So hopefully we're going in the right way. In December 2024, 2 million people were in contact with NHS mental health services, including people waiting for care, and that waiting list is long. It is long. Among areas with comparable data over time, number of people in contact with services increased by 36% between 2019 and 2024. The number of people in England with prescriptions for antidepressants has risen 12%. These trends will be at least partly driven by attempts to increase access to mental health care, but are also consistent with patterns observed in surveys, benefits data, and death. There it is in black and white. Mental health has severely deteriorated since COVID. It has got shit ton worse. People are taking their own life. People are drinking more. People are taking drugs. Thankfully, people are coming forward and talking. Because that'll be my go-to. Talk. Seek the help you need. Reach out. However, not a dig at the NHS. Okay? At all. But you try getting any mental health support through the NHS, there's a waiting list. Where do you go between needing it and getting that appointment? Where do you go in between? You just kind of fall between the cracks, and hopefully when you need the gap between needing it and seeing them, hopefully you make it. It's a big gap. It's where charities step in. It's where the Samaritans step in. You know, don't struggle alone. Don't suffer alone. You know, there are places to help you, but you need to dig them out for yourself. And, you know, we have access to the internet now. And whilst the internet is a cesspit for some things, you know, it really is. It's actually helpful as well. And for things like this, you can find the help if you're honest with yourself and you take those steps yourself and reach out yourself. But with regards to waiting for the NHS, the waiting list to try and get help, and unfortunately with mental health, it's not like your mental health is damaged to this point, you know, sort of 50%. And if you are seen 18 months later, you're at 50% damage. Mental health exacerbates. It goes up, it increases, which means your risks increase, which then mean by the time you have seen someone, it's a lot harder to help. Use the NHS, you know, use what they've got, listen to what they say, but also seek out that help for yourself, whether it's Samaritans or another mental health charity, maybe one that's more specific to your needs, more understanding of your needs. Samaritans are fantastic, by the way. I'm not, you know, if you are in a crisis, ring them. You know, you can find the number online. Top of my head, I can't remember. Don't want to get the number wrong and put out false information. I'm not the government. But it's difficult, you know, it generally is difficult to know where to turn and what to do when you are generally in that place where the next day is going to be a struggle, just making it to it, you know. We have days like that. We all do. So Samaritans 116123. If you are in a crisis, you come across someone in a crisis, 116123, 24 hours a day, there to take your calls, and to talk to you. More importantly, to listen. Sometimes it feels like we're not listened to when we are having a mental health issue. Sometimes, especially at the moment in the media, it feels like we are somehow blamed and we're swinging the lead and we are taking a piss. Some people are. And I'm sure it is the vast minority of people taking a piss. I'm sure 2020, the lockdowns, and more importantly, the legacy of the lockdowns has created just an issue that a lot of people didn't see coming. When you spend months upon months trying to scare people, don't then be surprised when people are scared. You know what I mean? I have heard there's more awareness about mental health now and more diagnosis, and I heard it described as overdiagnosis. Potentially. That could happen. There is more awareness now and maybe things are more picked up on. But this paints that in a dim light, to be honest with you. So rising people taking their own life rates show the mental health crisis isn't about overdiagnosis. The failure to address it is causing misery. It's been almost 20 years since the launch of Time to Change, the campaign aimed at smashing the stigma around mental health. Since then, awareness has grown significantly. Yes, it has, and thank God. A topic once spoken about only in whispers is now at the forefront of public debate. And yet, in 2025, the British rate of people taking their own life is higher than at any point in the 21st century. Self-harm has risen sharply and the prevalence of mental illness has increased across the board. We are not just facing a challenge, we are in the midst of a full-blown crisis. Some say this is a result of overdiagnosis or greater awareness. But that does not explain why more people are taking their own lives. And says rising rates cannot be explained away by social media trends or changes in how we talk about mental health. You only have to look at the situation in Blackpool South to see that something far more serious is going on. My nana lives in Blackpool. In Blackpool, healthy life expectancy is the lowest in England for both men and women, around 10 years below the national average. Poor housing, insecure work, which I already touched on with COVID and the lockdowns, and entrenched deprivation have a direct and devastating effect on mental well-being. So this is an individual writing this article. But this is an issue across the UK where suicide rates are going up. People are taking their own life. The lockdowns caused so much distress and pain and anxiety and issues among people that were never addressed afterwards. It was, yay, lockdowns are finished, let's celebrate. Don't worry about how we messed with your head, how we messed with your livelihoods, how we affected your children, how inflation's gone up, how the cost of everything has gone up. we have made your life worse. Whether there was a net good or not, it's irrelevant. The fact that there are so many negatives and have not been addressed since, it's like, right, they're done with, get on with it. And then question why there's mental health crisis. Really? Really? It needs to be addressed. It needs to be talked about honestly. I know there's an inquiry going in regards to COVID. I've not heard them talk about mental health in there. Maybe they have done. And if they have, it's not made major news. To me, everyone's got their own aspects of any inquiry that they want to hear about. But the mental health side of it is something I'm interested in and something that is evidently causing such a huge issue. If it is being discussed about it, it should be all over the news. That's the way I view it, because it's affecting everyone. Whether you are struggling with your mental health right now or not, I can guarantee you know someone who is. Whether you know that they are or whether they're hiding it and putting a mask on and bottling all up and all the things that myself and other guys like me do, you know someone who's going through that. Needs to be addressed, and where needed, apologies need to be had and lessons need to be learned. Something we hear after every inquiry, lessons need to be learned until the next time they do something. It is so serious right now, and I feel like it's almost taken, the awareness became great and more people were talking about mental health. But now that we see we have a mental health crisis, it seems to be, no, it can't be that bad. Shut up. You know what I mean? And just beat him down with a stick. You know what I mean? Feels like the awareness of mental health is actually taking a step back. And rather than trying to help people, it's almost a victim blaming type thing that's going on right now. Which again pisses me off. You ask anyone who generally has a mental health disorder of some description, you just ask them whether they enjoy it. You'll probably get a punch in the face. You know what I mean? Someone asked me whether I enjoy it when I have depressive episodes. Oh, I'm going to want to hurt you. You know what I mean? No. Mental health is not fun. Like, poor mental health is not fun. I wish I never suffered with depression. I wish I didn't have obsessive compulsive disorder where I literally have to check the front doors locked 5 times, where I'm constantly washing my hands, where if there is a placemat out of place, I cannot sit down till it's exactly in the right place. Like, these are not enjoyable things. These are tiring things. I am tired of the issues that I have mentally. However, I enjoy my life and I get through it because I talk about it and I'm not ashamed by it. And if someone tries to shame me for my mental health, I'll tell them to go screw himself. 10 years ago, I would not have done. And when we try and victim blame people for going through stuff that they don't understand, I don't understand that. And I've suffered with depression since I was 12 or 13 years old. You know, it got worse. It's now got a lot better. Trying to blame people, that's not helpful. As I've already said a couple of times, I'm sure there are some people taking the piss that are the minority. Instead of trying to victim blame, let's try and help people through. Let's look at it logically and say, look, there are people with issues. What's the mental health services like in the NHS? Pretty on its knees at the moment. So let's get behind charities. Let's do national campaigns. Let's try and improve people. Rather than kick them while they're down, let's try and get them back up onto their feet. I don't think that's overly idealistic. You know, we are one country that is very divided right now. But one thing that unites a lot of people is mental health struggles. In a weird way, maybe that's the one thing that can unite the country. We're all a little bit in need right now regarding our mental health. If you are one of those people in need right now, seek the help you need. And if you know someone, maybe be the support that they need. Let's try and bring back a certain level of humanity, which I struggle to see sometimes when I look at the world. Let's help ourselves out, and let's help the people we know out, the people close to us. You know, and if everybody did that, that would spread. And let's pull each other up, like, you know what I mean? So, as I said, this was the welfare, the cost of welfare is rising. And a large part of that is mental health. Mental health problems are rising, and a large part of that is the lockdown legacy. I hope the COVID inquiry actually looks into that side of it. I doubt it. I doubt it will get the airtime that it should fully get. But that's looking backwards. I would love to see people held accountable, but looking forwards, let's get the help. It's out there. There are charities that do great works. 116 123 Samaritans, if you're in that place. Go through the NHS. Don't be ashamed of seeking help. And when you hear certain people in the media saying things about, you know, there's no way the mental health crisis is this bad, maybe just look at him, laugh and say, I thought you was a journalist. I thought you were supposed to know what you was talking about. So I'm going to wrap up there. Stay strong. Stay strong. Thank you for watching. This has been the Mancast. If you enjoyed it, then please like, subscribe, share. Leave a comment and follow us. I am on YouTube, Rumble and X at the Mancast UK. And until next time, I will see you later.